What's up, YouTube? It's been a little bit since I last posted. About a month and a half has happened since my first vlog, and a lot's happened in terms of poker. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that front. So as you guys can see from this graph here, I've hit a little bit of a break-even stretch since that biggest winning poker session we had in the middle of August. And yeah, I just haven't been running super great or super bad, and that's been reflected in my results here. And other than that, I spent the first week of October in Las Vegas, and I played day 1B of the reunion. Got pretty far, got 386th place, good for about 1080. That's a decent return on my initial investment of 500, but still, nothing crazy. And I played a bunch of cash games and ran terribly, and I only ended up winning one of my cash sessions, my last one that I played at Bellagio the day before I left. So that was a bit of an experience. And yeah, I just wanted to show you guys some of the pics and videos that I got from the trip. It was overall super fun. This time of the year is amazing to be in Vegas. So much poker happening, so lively, and I think everyone should experience it at least once. This was my first time, and it was great. Now I know a lot of you guys are tuning in just for the hand, so I don't want to derail the whole video with all these Vegas shenanigans and stuff. So let's get back to the business. Here's some hands I played from a session on 10/8/21 at Lucky Chances Casino in Colma, California. This hand isn't terribly interesting, but I wanted to include it because how you play marginal hands ultimately determines how profitable you are at poker. I'm in the big blind, and I opened 2 red jacks to $60 over 2 limps. Old Lady Coffee in middle position decides to limp call, so now I'm kind of worried. A loose gentleman on the button also limp calls, so we go to a flop with $190 in the middle. The flop comes Ace-King-4 rainbow, and it checks through. At the time, I thought a big portion of the limp calling range would be some weak aces, so I didn't want to bloat the pot with a hand that's really ahead or really behind. The turn comes an inconsequential deuce. It checks through again. The river comes a 10, and now Old Woman Coffee bets $25. The button calls, and I fold. And she turns over pocket queens. Although there's some hindsight bias, I would have definitely preferred to bet the flop and to continue the aggression on the turn. Multi-way, a small bet size works really well since a bluff doesn't have to work nearly as often as heads up, and I also had the betting lead pre-flop in my favor. I didn't have my camera out in time, so we pick up this next hand midway through the action. I raised to $55 over 2 limpers, and this time I get 2 callers on my left and 1 in early position. The flop comes 9-6-2, 2 diamonds, 1 club. I think this is a good flop to bet small, since I have all the overpairs in my range, and I fire $100. The button decides to re-raise me to $240. At this point, I could definitely fold since not many people at lower stakes bluff, especially in a multi-way pot. However, I have 2 things going for me. I'm getting great odds to call, and we both started the hand 1K effective, so there's plenty of implied odds. I have to invest $140 into a pot of 570, giving me a little better than 4-1 on a call to spike my gut shot. I can also turn more equity with any ace, 7, 8, or club, which is over 1/3 of any random turn card. The turn does indeed give me more equity in the 8 of spades. I check, and surprisingly the button checks back. Unfortunately, the river bricks out with the 10 of clubs. I think momentarily about bluffing at it, but chicken out. At this point, I don't have a great read on this guy, and it's unlikely he'll give me any credit for a 7. The button now bets $350, and you can see me insta-fold. He would later tell me he had pocket queens, so just like that, I'm over 2 against pocket queens today. These next 2 hands happen in quick succession, and the order of events is important. I get dealt a good-looking ace-queen on the kill. The table has been very limp-happy, with many pots going multi-way. I kid you not, there are 6 or 7 limpers to me. On my action, I raise it to $115. One by one, they all fold, so I take down a nice amount of dead money. Immediately after, I pick up pocket jacks in middle position. Listen carefully to the audio to hear what happens next.
Did I just flash back in time? What happened there? What that happened up 45 seconds ago? Oh.
The button, who's clearly tired of me raising, defends in position. We go to a flop with a pot almost at $300. The flop comes queen, 4, 3, 2 spades. I elect to go with a small size and bet $75. Looking back, I prefer going at least 1/3 pot, but going a little smaller can't hurt since this board should heavily favor the pre-flop aggressor's range. Most of the limp calling range should miss, except for hands like pocket 3s and pocket 4s, and specifically ace high or king high flush draws. The button flats. The turn brings a 6 of clubs, which shouldn't change much. I'm not entirely sure what to do here. On the one hand, I have a hand that wants to get to showdown. On the other hand, I think he's heavily weighted towards flush draws, so I still want to charge him. After thinking it through, I decide to bet around half pot, intending to shut down if called. However, it doesn't come to that. Instead, the button re-raises me to $420. Now I'm in a pretty miserable spot. I don't think this is a bluff very often. It doesn't make much sense for him to raise any flush draws, but even if he did, I'm not in a very good spot. The fact that we're playing lower stakes, and the fact that the raise was for such a small sizing, I didn't think there'd be many bluffs. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a hand like pocket 6s that somehow turned a set. There's one last hand that I have to share with you guys, but unfortunately I stopped filming at around 11 o'clock. At that time, our 3-5 table broke, and I decided to play the 5-10 game. I buy it for around $2,000. And since I don't normally play this game and the game is uncapped, I play a little tighter and more standard than I normally would. Now that the context is out of the way, strap your seatbelts in, because this next hand is going to be wild. It's a straddle pot, and an older gentleman under the gun opens to $70. A good 5-10 reg in early position flats to $70. I look down at ace-10 of spades on the button. Normally I would think about squeezing, but this particular under the gun opener is in the 5-10 reg, and having played with him in the past, I expect his range to be very narrow. The small blind, big blind, and straddler all end up calling as well. We go 6 ways to a flop of ace, 10, 4, 2 clubs. Action checks to the early position flatter, who decides to bet $140, about 1/3 pot. I can go either way here. Raising is probably the preferred option since there's a flush draw out there, but I decided to play a little bit more conservatively and flat. The small blind, who is also a solid 5-10 reg, check raises to $700. The original bettor and I both flat to $700, and at this point I'm not sure I have the best hand. The turn is a queen of hearts, and the small blind does not slow down. Both he and the early position player are around $5,000 deep, while I started this hand with only $2,000. He bets $1,500, which is enough to put me all in. The early position player thinks that isn't enough. He ships his entire stack. After having played my B game the entire night, I couldn't find the fold button, even though I know I'm behind to one or both players. So I throw in the call, and the small blind folds. The early position player wants to run it once, and I actually overheard from the other players that this player was running particularly bad tonight. Well, I don't believe the river when it comes out. I spike the 10 of hearts to fill up, and I'm not surprised when the early position player looks sick and flips over his pocket 4s. To make matters more interesting, the small blind announces that he folded ace-10. It turns out that I made a donkey call and I get rewarded handsomely for it. It's definitely not my proudest moment, but you know what they say. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Not long after that, I racked up and headed home since I've been playing for a good portion of the night already. Alright, thanks for tuning in, guys. That's all the interesting hands I had for you. I just want to say that I really appreciate the views and support. The fact that even 100 people watched my first vlog inspired me to make this second one. Also, I don't want people to think or be misled into thinking that I win all my sessions or only post winning sessions. I was fully expecting to post a losing video log for this episode, but somehow I managed to bink a 3-outer to take home my largest pot ever. As for the results, I got into the game for 1700 in the 3-5 and left with 1000. Then I bought into the 5-10 game for 1800 and I ran it up all the way to 6380. So after doing up all the math, I came out with a net profit of 3860, which is amazing. Hopefully next time though I have better poker plays to show you all. But until then, I will see y'all.